This is the Literary License Podcast, coming at you from Collingsport, Maine, discussing strange goings-on in the world of the Carolyns family, with your hosts, Tom Damon, Vicky Ray, and Keith Chorgo, bring you daytime drama fear from the past into your present.
Hello?
Carolyn?
Why, Burke Devlin, what a surprise. I never expected you to call. Who did you want to talk to? My mother?
I want to talk to you and you know it. It's about your ring.
You mean you found it? Oh, how marvelous. I've been searching frantically, everywhere. Believe me, that's a very precious ring to me, and I was so upset when I found it was missing.
All right, Carolyn, all right. You've made your point. How do you suggest I go about getting it back to you?
Well, I thought you might have some ideas on that subject.
Well, as I told you, I'm driving to Bangor this afternoon. I could drop it off on the way.
Oh, that would take you out of your way. I wouldn't dream of it.
I don't mind.
Oh, but I do. What time are you leaving for Bangor?
About 1 o'clock.
I'll meet you in the restaurant at 12:30. You can give me the ring then. Okay?
Flow Rider.
I do.
Alexander, girl, I know what you like.
Some people call them players, but I'm far from terrified. Somehow I'm drawn to danger and have been all of my life. It feels my heart's divided, halfway between wrong and right. I know I'm playing with fire, but I don't mind. Yeah, the bad boys are always catching my eye. I said the bad boys are always spinning my mind. Even though I know that I'm good for me, it's a risk I take for the chemistry. With the bad boys always catching my eye.
Because I like her.
Bad boys. Some think it's complicated, but they're straight up from me. I don't need no explanation. It's nothing more than what you see. My heart still feels divided, halfway between wrong and right. I know I'm playing with fire, but I don't mind. Yeah, the bad boys are always catching my eye. I said the bad boys are always spinning my mind. Even though I know that I'm good for me, it's a risk I take for the chemistry. With the bad boys always catching my eye.
I know you want me, shawty, 'cause I'm a
Bad boy.
yeah, shawty can't help it. She's also addicted to them bad for fellas. With even the alphabet, she only sings the crooked letters.
Because I like
Take all
her.
the risks, that chemistry, she like I'm tougher than leather. Not even a pause, it's not like I'm out of the outlaw, that's on a regular. By any means necessary, girl. She like I'm ruthless, that's my word. It's not a nuisance.
Because I like her.
Get the more, the merrier. It's not a big surprise. I know the man will catch your eyes. Look at the wild when I go in the sky.
Because I like her.
The bad boys are always catching my eye. I said the bad boys are always spinning my mind. Even though I know that I'm good for me, it's a risk I take. Chemistry with the bad boys always catching my eye. Yeah, the bad boys are always spinning my mind. I said the bad boys are always catching my eye.
Against your will? You'll note, of course, that I am the prisoner.
Oh, well then, Your Honor, I must state that the prisoner did none of those things. I alone am to blame. I confess and throw myself on the mercy of the court.
The court recognizes the sterling qualities of the witness, and as a reward presents her with this sterling silver pen.
Oh, I hope the case is dismissed. Here's your pen back.
That's not mine. I gave it to you.
Oh, that was just in fun.
I never
Here.
do anything in fun. The pen is yours.
No, I couldn't. It must have cost a lot.
Do you think I would give you anything that didn't cost a lot?
Hello, welcome to Literary License Podcast. Today we're doing Dark Shadows, episodes 26 to 48. And before we get started, let's find out who's with us. And today we have Tom Diamond, our regular co-host. Say hello, Tom.
Hello, everybody. Hope everybody is well and thriving. And good to be here again.
And we also have our regular co-host for the Dark Shadows, Vicki Ray. Hello, Vicki.
Hey, guys. Hi, everybody.
And, of course, myself, Keith Shago. And before we get started, let's find out what we've been up to. So, Vicki, what have you been up to in the past week?
The usual, being a grandma and taking Asher to his things. And I didn't know it was on Netflix, but The 100 has a 6th season, which I was so glad to see. But they're not going to have a 7th season. I'm halfway through it, so I was kind of bummed about that. And I watched Jupiter Rising last night. I didn't think I was going to like it, but it was kind of good, actually. It was different. And other than that, going to a concert tonight and just enjoying what's left of the summer before all the crazy stuff begins. What about you?
What about yourself, Tom? What have you been up to for last time we saw you? I guess it's been almost a month now.
Yep.
Yes, it has. Time flies. Well, first of all, I've been invited to a wedding next October, which I have to attend. And the reason for that is because it's my own wedding. So that
Shit happens.
Yeah, I guess so. So that will be nice. Tentatively October 17th, but of course, you know, that's a tentative date right now. That's
Congrats.
Thank you very much. So I have been I've been watching Penny Dreadful on Netflix, and I cannot say I'm very, very impressed with it, really, and I'm only sorry that it went off the air after 20 episodes. But
You and a lot of other people, they were really bummed out about that. Terrible that they didn't keep on going.
It's really a combination of Dark Shadows, and because they used all the horror literary characters in Penny Dreadful, the way they stole, and of course Dark Shadows stole from that and gave them different names. But Penny Dreadful does the original names, and so you have the Mina Murray, and you have the Dracula stuff, and you've got Frankenstein. And it's a combination of that and the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
I was just going to say that. It sounds like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which I love that movie. I'm a total fan of that movie.
It was a great movie, and for people who haven't seen it yet, with Sean Connery, back in 91, I think it came out.
It's been a while. It's getting old.
Yeah, in the 90s. So it's a combination of those two shows. Very, 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 very impressive. And they are going to have a sequel, so to speak, starting in March of 2020. It's been announced. Penny Dreadful City of Angels is the title, and it's set in 1938 Los Angeles, and Nathan Lane has a starring role on Showtime. So that's something I'm really looking forward to, tinkering with my voiceover business, and having a lot of fun, actually, over the fact that, I'll mention this now, that we've got a new Dark Shadows series, apparently in serious talks between the producer and Warner Brothers, and they're talking right now. So we don't know much more about it other than that. The producer had leaked this to Forbes magazine in a recent article with them, where he was describing his other work, and there's only like one line about it. But a lot of the fans are excited about it, and there are some fans that are saying, "Oh no, let's just keep the original. Why do we want anything new?"
Well, it's not going to hurt anything if they try.
That's right.
It's not going to make a difference.
Absolutely, and to them I say, and of course everybody's entitled to their opinion, but to them I say, listen, Dark Shadows will never be replaced. That's what I think a lot of them are afraid of. And we can only be expanded upon. And as long as it's handled the right way, in terms of the original formula of Shadows, and let them add stuff, since, but let's keep it serious. Let's not make a satire out of it. And I'm not referring to the film that will not be named, that did, but as long as it's done that way, I think it'll work.
Well, I mean, in my view on the new Dark Shadows, I mean, the thing is, did the various multiple universes of Star Trek take away from the original Star Trek? No. So
no, it did not.
That's a good point. Yep.
And if you look at Riverdale, has that taken anything away from the Archies, or Sabrina taken anything away from Sabrina the Teenage Witch when we were growing up? No. It's expand the universe. You can always expand the universe, so you always get something new.
There's enough room for everybody.
Yep.
And myself, what have I been up to? Well, I've been watching a lot of YouTube, watching Mobility Mary. Mobility Mary is this woman who's extremely overweight.
Oh, my God. You said...
through Santa Monica, where she puts this camera in front of her scooter and basically
bitches.
Verbally abuses and bitches her way through the streets as she's trying to plow down people using catchphrases like...
I couldn't stop laughing when you posted that on my Facebook.
Unbelievable. Oh, my God.
Granny's Angels or something like that.
I know. It's like every time I see Keith post this, Keith Shago is posted on your timeline, and I'm always scared to look. It's like I don't know what it's going to be.
I am totally in love with Mobility Mary.
It's hysterical. It is. It's up there with Tourette's guy. Definitely up there with Tourette's
I'm watching Angry Grandma as well, get weather reports, which is...
Oh, my God. She's hysterical. I almost pissed my pants the first time I saw that. And Brittany's going, oh, my God, that's you, when it's like tornado watches. Like, oh, I'm not that bad yet.
Well, besides that, I'm just watching Pose finish, which was a fantastic series. I think they really handled very difficult subject matter very, very well. And
you went too quick on that title. What was that on?
Pose. It's Ryan Murphy. It's Ryan Murphy's newest series. Well, it's the second season. And then I'm just getting prepared for American Horror Stories 1984.
So. Oh, wow. That's been around for a long time, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah. How many seasons now?
18 or something? Something like that?
I think we're up to like 10, 9 or 10.
10. Okay.
You got the theme for the new American Horror Story? I didn't
New
read
American Horror Story is going back to the slasher films. It's going to be an ode to all the 80s slasher films.
Oh, hell yeah. Yes.
But besides that, what else have I been up to? Just work, and getting the newsletter out, which everyone should have if you subscribe to it.
Everybody should read because it's fantastic.
It's marvelous.
And what else? And that's about it, really. And I've done season 4 and season 5 way ahead of schedule. But
I know you really are an overachiever this week.
Well, they have to be done because of marketing reasons, which will come clear in January. So, but besides that, just living life. It's bank holiday weekend today, so hurrah for us in the UK. So, before we get any further, let's get into our Dark Shadows. And out of the Shadows segment. So, Tom, what trivia do you have for us about episodes 26 to 48?
Well, first of all, it's kind of been a busy month, and before I go into that, I do want to say that the fans who have seen what was coming up know that Joyce McClintock was supposed to be on today. Joyce is a fellow Dark Shadows fan, and unfortunately, she had a medical emergency in the family, and she had to bow out yesterday.
We will be missing her.
Absolutely, and I'm sure hopefully everything will work out as far as that's concerned. But it's been a really busy month. Because aside from the new DS series, which we talked about, Denise Nickerson's daughter-in-law has given birth a few days ago to a nice baby daughter whose name is Madison Victoria. And Victoria is the middle name. I wonder.
That's a fantastic name.
Yes. I wonder if Dark Shadows had anything to do with that middle name. But I'm sure we all wish her well. And on the other side, Cy Thomasoff, the set designer of Dark Shadows, passed away a few weeks ago at the ripe old age of 96. May he rest in peace. And of course, all you have to do is look at the series to see the magnificent setting work that he did, including real wood, as opposed to other soap operas of the day that were used in the building of the sets. And also the Dark Shadows revival, which is something to be talked about later. One of the minor actresses in the Dark Shadows revival, and I'm sorry I do not have her name, but she had a bit role as the victim of the Reverend Trask character in the 1795 segment, and that was played by Roy Thins, by the way, and she passed away recently, an untimely death last week. So again, I hope that they're doing well in that great Collinwood in the sky. So trivia. Oh my God, trivia. Well, we've got a number of people in this particular segment. Bernard Hughes, who played a character by the name of Stuart Bronson, and I think he was on the show for 1 or 2 episodes. And he essentially was a business person dealing with Burke Devlin. And Bernard Hughes was a character actor of many long years standing in Broadway, who went on in All in the Family to play the Irish priest with Archie Bunker. And he's done a hell of a lot of things. A very interesting thing is that one of the Blue Whale dancer extras, who you'll see during this segment, is none other than Harvey Keitel. And Harvey Keitel went on to become a star in his own right, especially working with Martin Scorsese in the 70s. The two big additions...
Blue Whale dancer.
What? I don't know, get me going, because I gotta go back and Keith doing the Blue Whale dance.
I'm gonna have to go back. I'm gonna have to go back and just see Harvey Keitel. Sorry, Harvey Keitel, Blue Whale dancer.
Talk is actually that Leela Swift was trying to get Harvey Keitel on the show because she thought he was very handsome, and Curtis did not agree. But that's definitely a little piece of trivia. But there was also a gal who there's a show after that was shown after Dark Shadows in that time period called Where the Action Is. I don't know if you'll that was Dick Clark came on, and all the rock groups of the 60s were mentioned, and one of the dancers on Where the Action Is was asked to come on to Dark Shadows and was also one of the Blue Whale extras. I
want to be a Blue Whale extra on the next season, whatever.
So let's salute the Frug and the Monkey and the Jerk and all those wonderful things at the time. Carolyn was very good at doing the Frug. If you look at
she was brilliant.
Yeah, no, she really was a good dancer. The two major stars that came on during this period was David Ford, the second Sam Evans, who came on in episode 35, which we'll be getting into later. And right after that, in 36 or 37, Thayer David, for the first time, comes on as the second Matthew Morgan. The first Matthew Morgan was played by George Mitchell. And, of course, Thayer David later on, and we will talk about that, and everybody listen to it when it happens. He stays throughout the show, playing various characters in various time periods. But those are, I think, the major happenings. As far as bloopers, well, you've got microphones slamming into sets.
Yeah.
You've got people who are really good at listening will hear traffic, will hear car horns.
You hear people talking in the background too.
People talking in the background, but the funny
shadows of the boom.
Yep, absolutely. But you hear the car horns because those are the car horns outside the studio as the traffic was going by in New York, and it was being picked up on the mic. And so when you hear car horns in the drawing room at Collinwood, you kind of wonder what the heck is going on. A very interesting blooper, practically occurring in the first episode. You know, you see the Constable Jonas Carter, who was later downgraded to sheriff because They couldn't get a constable uniform. They got him with a sheriff uniform. They had to change him. So in his office is a picture of none other than Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ, the president at that time. Now, what the hell was Lyndon Baines Johnson doing? Well, Dan Curtis was pissed off, too, because Dan Curtis was actually saying, Lyndon Baines Johnson's not on Dark Shadows. He's not a character on Dark Shadows. But ABC was broadcasting the wedding of Lyndon Baines Johnson's daughter the next week. So they wanted that picture on there for marketing purposes.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So
I guess it makes sense. I mean, he was the president at the time, so I guess wasn't he president at the time?
Yes, he is. Yes, he was.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I guess in the sheriff's office, I guess like court scenes, you always have the president's picture.
Correct. So it made sense from that standpoint. But
how was that marketing procedure, though?
Wow.
No, who's going to even notice? I mean, do you notice? I noticed like nothing. Well, I noticed the backgrounds, but that one didn't jump out at me. Then again, I wasn't at it all back in the 60s.
Well, I think you have to look. I think you have to look kind of closely. But yeah,
I'd have to go find that episode now.
Yeah,
I just say every time I think of LBJ, I just think of hair. LBJ to the on the 4th Street, USA. When he got there, what did he see? The youth of America and LSD.
Yeah.
Every time I hear Lyndon B. Johnson, that's all I think of is LBJ.
I can just see my fellow Americans,
Yeah.
in Collinwood, So that was the fun part in terms of a blooper. Was the scene in episode 28 where you've got Catherine Leigh Scott and David. Are we there, by the way? Are you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I just dropped my mouse, but I'm okay. So you've got a scene in episode 28, and Maggie and David are in the famous hotel coffee shop, and she decides to make him a chocolate sundae.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Now, the interesting thing about that is that originally it was not going to be a sundae. Originally, it was going to be Coca-Cola, but Standards and Practices complained to Dan Curtis that, hey, wait a minute, this is subliminal advertising. Coca-Cola is not a sponsor of the show, so you shouldn't be having anything on the show that represents that. So they decided to make a chocolate sundae instead. But because all the lights and the Klieg lights were on it, the sundae melted very rapidly.
I was going to say that was a really runny sundae.
It looked like soup. It looked like soup by the time they were eating it. And Curtis once again was up in arms. Oh my God, it's soup! He goes, what is this? What kind of a sundae is that? How are people going to believe that?
Being excited, Dan Curtis is they didn't reshoot.
Exactly.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So and of course, and there were other bloopers, but of course we can talk about them, I think. One more thing I do want to mention, another actor that came on board, Michael Curry, who played, and he was the one who played Sheriff Constable Carter or Sheriff Carter. He went on for later on into a number of TV roles in the 70s. And if you've seen Soap, Vicki, were you a fan of Soap? I don't know.
Yeah, I used to watch it. I used to like it when Bert was abducted by the aliens. It's my favorite part.
Well, if you remember the governor on Soap, which was
I know what you're talking about.
And that is Michael Curry. That is the actor who played Constable Carter on Dark Shadow. So I don't want to forget about that. So that just gives you a sample of the marvelous stuff that was going on back then.
Ooh, excellent. So, Vicki, do you have anything out of the Shadows portion? Any bloopers or anything you want to add?
Not really bloopers, but there are some interesting facts I found. It was the Dark Shadows was the first time. It was the first daytime drama to attract a large following of young viewers, as we all know that. But with other soap operas, but it also pulled in for The Young and the Restless, All My Children, and General Hospital. It kind of was pivotal, and other people wanting to watch these other soaps. So it was like the age of soaps, basically, is when they, the 80s, they started doing the, the super couples and whatnot. But it was the first one to be ever offered as a domestic syndication. So that was a first in soap operas. And I didn't know it, but it was the first series that was actually purchased by the Sci-Fi Channel to debut reruns.
Yeah.
And I did not know that. So I thought that was interesting.
Well, I worked for the Sci-Fi Channel here in the UK, and that was the first show. We used to show 4 episodes a day. And that was our doing Monday through Friday. And what's the nice thing is that we done the Sci-Fi Channel, which they have included in the DVD set. That if you buy the DVD set, interviews with all the characters for all the actors. So they have like little sound bites that they would put in between the shows because the show didn't run for the full half hour, so they would do these little interviews, those 2-3 minute interviews with all the cast. And
didn't know that. I always watched the Sci-Fi Channel. I used to like Space Science Theater.
Oh, that's funny. Well, Vicki, you bring up an excellent point when you talk about it catering to the younger market. In point of fact, it looks like the show that preceded Dark Shadows, when it first came on, and it was on at 4:00 Eastern Standard Time when it first came on, and the show that preceded that was a soap opera called Never Too Young, which had Tony Dow, and Tony Dow, of course, from Leave It to Beaver. And Never Too Young was basically a teenage soap opera. And then you had Where the Action Is, which came right after Dark Shadows, which we already talked about. And at first, there were over 9 million viewers that tuned into Dark Shadows when it first came on back in June of '66. But within a month, that deteriorated, and the ratings were getting lower. Well, why was that happening? Last time I mentioned that the stations the affiliates were not subscribing to the regular programs, and Dark Shadows was put on some of these places at 11 o'clock at night when nobody really cared, it was asleep. That was one reason. But the other reason, as it turns out, had to do with the fact that the show being written by Art Wallace was felt that it was not catering to the younger crowd. I mean, look at the kids. Little David. Well, the teenagers didn't really care about Little David. And
that horrible little child in the neighborhood that you don't want to play with.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's always one.
It's like, oh God, Carolyn, brother who's like a total brat. Like, get away from me.
There you go. And Carolyn was. And poor Carolyn was stuck in the house. I mean, she did the best she could to dance the frug at the Blue Whale, but that was the extent of her rebelliousness. And Liz was going to keep her there to get married and stay in Collinwood to Joe, and who'll get his $25 a week raise. And the teenagers were not exactly.
Yeah, they had to up their ante on that, and that they were pretty smart. But before we go on to the episode, though. The one thing that I was Joan Bennett is like one of my favorite. I love her to death. But she was like a motion picture actress of the 30s and the 50s. And she was also the first major film performer from Hollywood's golden era to join a daytime television show.
Absolutely. And her agent talked her into it. Joan Bennett at the time was saying, well, she knew that she was not going to be having ingenue roles anymore in the movies. So I
think she's fantastic.
She was exploring other areas. She did a great job. She's certainly the main, and she was the main. Curtis loved the fact that he had a major movie star for practically one of the first times on a soap opera that could attract a different kind of crowd. Nonetheless, Art Wallace, who did the first 40 episodes, and we've talked about him before, and he wrote those. He was. I don't think he was with it in terms of the newer generation, and Dan Curtis was not happy with the fact that the ratings were dropping, and he felt that they had to start to go into a different direction, which is why he hired Francis Swan to write along with Art Wallace, and they started doing that in episode 41, and at that point, you now start to see a shift from the Gothic romance that Art Wallace envisioned to more of an Alfred Hitchcock murder mystery thing. And you'll see that with the plots we're going to go into with Roger and the break and with the breaks and the accent, which we talked about with the bleeder valve, along with the interaction between Burke and David, and later on in this segment we're going to be talking about the silver filigree pen that winds up from one place to another, and all this is part of now getting into the whodunit era of Dark Shadows, which Curtis felt would work more.
So what we're going to do is going to do a special PSA, a public service announcement, for help save the sharks. Remember, the sharks are depleting. About 98 to 99% of the population of the sharks are dying due to the fin trade. So what we need you to do is listen to this special public service announcement for Eli Roth, and then make sure you go on, sign a petition to help stop shark finning and the sale of shark fins throughout the United States. We're starting off in Florida. It'll become a worldwide venture, and your signature will help. It won't cost you any money, but make sure you sign the petition and listen to the word from the PSAs.
Yes, please do.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Eli Roth. And I'm underwater cinematographer Joe Romero. We're here on behalf of our friends at Shark Allies. There's a very important moment happening right now in Florida legislature, and we need your support. Florida imports and exports more shark fins than any place in the country. And there's a bill on the table to ban it completely. Shark finning is illegal in the U.S., but the shark fin trade is not. It's only illegal in 12 states. Florida will be the 13th state out of all 50 to adopt the no shark fin trade policy. Even though the shark finning is illegal, the trade is actually driving more illegal activity. If we eliminate the trade, we can eliminate finning. We lose an estimated 100 million sharks a year. It's 11,000 sharks an hour and 3 sharks a second. No animal can keep up with that. That's mass extinction. Go here and sign this petition and let your voice be heard. And follow our friends at Shark Allies. Whether you are from Florida or not, we need your help. Let's ban the shark fin trade completely.
So welcome back. You'll be able to find where you can sign the petition in the show notes here, and of course on our website at www.llpodcast.com to help save the shark trades. Remember, if you want the sharks to be there for generations to come, you have to act now. All it takes is a simple signature, 2 minutes of your time, and nothing further will come through as far as junk mails or anything like that, and do your course to help save the environment. So, Vicki, getting back to Dark Shadows, episodes 26 to 48, do you want to give a brief synopsis of the episodes?
Yes, I do. David is guilty and sent to his room. He's a little turd. Roger's nervous about Sam getting close to Burke. Burke's getting information to take over Collinsport. Vicki has dinner with Burke to find out information about her past because she has no clue where she came from. And Joe, the narc, goes and tells Carolyn, and Carolyn follows Burke to the city. Bill puts 2 and 2 together. Bill goes missing. Nobody knows where he's gone. And will Sam stop drinking?
So that brings us to the shedding some light on the situation. So, Tom, let's start discussion of the episode. So,
I think interestingly enough, you've in talking about drinking, you've got Joe's getting drunk in that in one of those episodes.
He got hammered and went and told Elizabeth off, basically.
He told Elizabeth off and told Carolyn off.
You're potted, says Carolyn.
Joe, I want you to leave. And he goes, who the hell are you? Just because you're my boss, you can't talk to me like that. That was
You're not the boss of me.
That's right.
But drunk Joe has so many valid points.
Yes, he did.
Absolutely. He's just very angry at having been manipulated by Carolyn all along. But he doesn't really understand Carolyn's true motivation. I mean, Carolyn is, interestingly enough, and I think what's brought out by Art Wallace once again in Shadows on the Wall, which was a series writer's Bible, was that Carolyn is afraid of getting married because she saw what happened to her mother in terms of the marriage to Paul Stoddard, who ran out on her.
But did she? My question basically is that which doesn't make a little bit of sense, because Carolyn's 18, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to make sure that we don't get too far into the future here because we have to stick
Right.
But Elizabeth, due to something happening to Paul Stoddard running off at the 18, did Carolyn even get to know her father?
It doesn't seem so. They don't talk about him, as all of us who have seen the several episodes after we knew what happened. They don't ever really bring him up much.
You are getting into later on, so I don't want to, spoil too much. But she really has no memory of him.
I was thinking because there's no way she would. Because it's almost like she came out
probably very little.
Bye bye, daddy.
Yeah. She's probably very young when he took off.
So it's what she's heard from Liz, and there's a big thing that Liz hasn't told her, which we're not going to get into right now because it's not covered yet, but we will. But there's a lot of Carolyn's grown up without a father figure. Yeah. And so there's another reason.
Which is why she's chasing Burke Devlin all over.
Correct. Daddy is
correct.
Daddy.
Daddy.
Correct. And also, by the way, and there's just a little hint of this, but there's also a little she's flirtatious with her Uncle Roger. And
there's something about that makes me kind of cringe a little bit. But Roger's, you either love or hate Roger. I love him. I think he's like a great.
I love Roger.
I think he's fantastic. I mean, just couldn't do this without Roger. He's such a fucker.
I wouldn't want to live with him in real life, but I love watching him.
Just think of poor Liz, who has to put up with him and practice.
Oh my God! It's like, get out! Well, they got that huge fucking house. It's like, open the other wing.
I know, just put him in the wing.
But it's really a tribute to Louis Edmonds because Louis Edmonds really gave the quintessential performance of Roger, and and he's there's nothing that you can say. The snob. Which comes out, and also the sense of humor. But
his entitlement, that's what I love about. He's entitled.
Yeah. But I think also when you see Roger, and the thing is Roger has this character, and I think he's not a very warm character
at all.
And as he's got a very difficult part to play, considering that there's no kind words that comes out of his mouth. Even when there's something kind, there's a sarcasm underlying everything. But and then he goes through and he pretty much bullies everyone. It's the only person he even bullies Carolyn at some point, but he bullies every single character in the show. But you still like him, and that hat's off to someone, because anyone of a lesser actor wouldn't be able to get away
pull
with
this off. No.
Well, one of the things with Louis Edmonds, and this happened because David Ford came on board. Layla Swift got David Ford because of his Broadway acting. Roger Davis also had theater experience, and it was Layla Swift's dream to kind of push this. And she didn't know if it could work at that time, but she was trying to push it out of the usual flat soap opera dialogue, which was the television, like they're talking to each other over a kitchen table, and to really get more theater into the whole thing. And it said that in episode 35, when David Ford's first appearance, and his chemistry with Louis Edmonds was absolutely electric. And Louis Edmonds really put on the dog and really went Grand Guignol on the Broadway performance. Both Dan Curtis and Lee were extremely impressed. And Leela actually allegedly brought Alexandra Mulkey up to the control room, Mitchell Ryan, Burke Devlin up to the control room, and asked, well, what do you think of them? And Louis Edmonds said he's absolutely fabulous to work with. And this is something that people don't realize because, and I don't want to go into the future, but David Ford's portrayal in the future changed, and I'm not going to go into why that happened, and it kind of cast a pall upon his professional career with Shadows. But when he first came on board, and a lot of fans don't realize this, he really did give a tremendous boost to the show, and he was able to take it, once again, give theater, the theatrical performance was sometimes over the top, but he injected that into the show, brought new life into the show, and that helped Louis Edmonds tremendously. But
I had to say that there is some. I mean, what I quite like about between episodes 26 and 48 is that all of a sudden it's like things have become softer and things have lightened up a little bit, and there's a lot of warmth. There's a lot of warmth coming through. Elizabeth's character has a lot of warmth, but there's some humor that plays out. I mean, there's one part where Maggie's, "Oh, Papa, why you need to get out of the house, da 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 da." Right. And I love when Sam turns and goes, "It's all right for you. Go to that expensive restaurant you work at." You're like, what?
There's never anybody in there except two characters at a time.
But it's a coffee shop. This expensive, well-to-do la-di-da restaurant you work at. And you're like, what? I'm
just saying, Sam's a great character too. I mean, he might be sloshed all the time, but he definitely has his personal message.
But I have to say, some of the best comedy comes from Sam, because I remember there's one scene where he knocks on the door. Elizabeth answers the door. He shows up at Collinsworth looking for Roger. We're going to speak to Liz, and he's fumbling with his words. He wasn't quite sure what to say, and he goes to the drawing room. He walks in the drawing room and goes, "Oh, this is a big room." And Elizabeth Collins looks at him and goes, "Oh, pretty much stop the crap. It's dull and gloomy and dingy. What do you want?" And then there's that other scene where like Roger's pounding on the door and Sam's hiding out in this house. And and he's going, "Sam, let me in. And Sam goes to the door going, "Who is it?" It's just fabulous. From the first 25 episodes we cover, I enjoyed episodes 26 to 48 a lot more. I've said this, people are getting into their characters.
That's
There's
right.
The humor into it. There's a little bit of mystery. And you can see where everyone's warming into their characters.
People are starting to come of their own in those episodes. They really are. You can see that their characters are becoming solid, and this is what's going to take you through the other, the rest of the seasons and episodes.
It's a growing pains. And think of this, and here's another little trivia fact, that the first day that David Ford appeared, he had not been hired yet. They were really trying him out. He was auditioning for that job. And practically the first scene that he comes through, there was a blooper. I think there was some plates clattering on the floor. There was this big, so as soon as he makes his grand entrance, you hear the plates crash. Poor guy. But but that's why he emoted the way he did, because he was trying to get the job, and he got it. And then you note that the next episode, he's playing it back more. He's not as over the top as he was, and he's a little more subtle. He's trying to find his way also. And in fact, they were
When you're talking about the character and how Roger comes through is funny. I think it's funny when they have that big meeting and Roger's like, "Fuck this shit. I want to go home. He didn't show up."
That's Bill Malloy. Where's Bill Malloy? Why didn't Bill Malloy show up? And that was, the poor guy had it was unavoidable. He was murdered. Or he was missing. He was missing.
He's missing in these episodes. We don't know what happened.
He was missing. Maybe he was. Maybe he wasn't.
Bill Malloy is the best thing out of these.
He's strong. He comes across strong.
So good. I mean, every time he came on, I couldn't. It's like he withheld that camera. I mean,
he nailed it.
He nailed it every single time. I love Bill Malloy. He was my favorite character between episodes 26 and 48.
He was certainly one of the only ones that had a New England accent on the show. So that, everybody else. I mean, I still cannot believe.
I lived in New England for 4 or 5 years, and I don't hear hardly any New England accent like Pak the Khan yet. And I mean, people, especially from Providence, in Maine, that they're from Maine. I remember my roommates, we'd go up to Maine and visit their families, and they always say, "Pull over." It's like, "Pull over." You just knew, but I mean, you don't hear it that much. They don't really take a whole lot of that main.
Unless it's like a Stephen King adaptation that's set in like Derry or something like that. Then
everything's in Derry.
Derry or Castle Rock.
Yeah.
Well, but I have to say that there's some things I did learn. I learned that if you are a 8 to 10-year-old boy and you try to murder your father and everyone finds out about it, you'll just get sent to your room and you won't be seen.
That's right.
You're not going
to. No problem.
15 episodes. You just like got that down. And then
he tries to kill Roger.
He tries to kill Roger. They send him to his room when they find out.
Would he take a valve or something out of the car? Was that a valve?
A bleeder valve. The bleeder valve.
The bleeder valve, yeah.
So they send him to his room. I think he sneaks out and says something quite meek, and then he goes back to his room so you don't see him again. Then next time you see him, he's back to his crappy little self.
He's such a hateful bipolar little fucker, isn't he?
Oh, the kid. Oh yeah.
Is.
Oh yeah, the kid. And by the way, another trivia point is that the bleeder valve thing. It's been found out that it is believed that Dan Curtis actually got the idea from an Alfred Hitchcock's Presents episode from the TV series, season 2, episode 19. It's called The Murder Case with Gina Rowlands. And you got almost exactly the same plot where in order to murder somebody, they don't call it the bleeder valve, but it's basically the same part that's taken out of the car to fake an accident. So you can see already how Dan Curtis is starting to borrow more from Alfred Hitchcock.
I can say it's official for me.
Dan Curtis, king of the stealing plots.
Right.
Yeah. No.
Like writing a new TV shows. Okay, Dan Curtis is going to hurry up, hide your scripts. Oh no.
I got to mention before we go any further. I got to mention a blooper I forgot, which is great, where Louis Edmonds, in the diner, he's supposed to make an entrance while I think Maggie is talking with either David or Burke. Well, you can see him through the door, which is partial glass, and of course he doesn't know he's being seen. So while he's waiting, he starts to do jumping jacks.
I gotta go back and watch that. I didn't notice.
You'll see him. He's at the right.
That was.
I'll find it for you in 15 minutes. But
no, don't worry about it. Just when you get it, just text me or something. Let me know. Because I've got to go back. I did not see that.
Yes. Oh, it's fantastic.
What about things that aren't bloopers? I mean, what about like Burke? Okay, Burke's in Bangor, because that's where everyone goes. There's no other city but Bangor to go to. So Burke's in Bangor with this attorney that's going to hopefully take over the Carolyns empire. And then there's Carolyn at the table, like within eye shot. They don't even see her. It's just like there's nobody in this restaurant except for Carolyn. She's over there going. She doesn't even order food. She's just sitting there sipping her water.
Yeah.
My God.
Then she has a fit because Victoria Winters, she's used to having dinner with Burke because she's trying to figure out where she came from and everything else. And then Joe Haskell comes to the door, realizes that she's in there, goes and narcs on her to Carolyn. So Carolyn starts
to all bitch, isn't he? I mean, Joe is he's such like a bitchy person. He's like, guess what I found out?
I know, he did. He ran right over to Collinwood to tell Carolyn that Vicki was having dinner with Burke. And then he orders 2 steaks and he's just sitting there eating 2 steaks by himself.
Well, then he finds out that Carolyn's gone to Bangor, so he runs out, guess what? Your daughter's gone to Bangor.
Yeah. Then Vicky's having dinner with Burke Devlin. Neener.
What a little bitch. He's like a little gossip. It's like, he's the neighborhood witch.
I know.
Neighborhood witch of Collinsport. Tattling on everyone.
He is, isn't he, though? Yeah, he's the only little narc on there, really. And he starts trouble with it. And then Carolyn gives Vicki a whole bunch of shit when she comes home because she's all hateful because she went out with somebody she barely knows.
Oh, I know. Well, I mean, Carolyn's knickers are in a twist, aren't they? Because it's like she wants Burke, only Burke.
Everybody wants to bang Burke.
He's the new meat in town. That's what happens when you're in a small town. It's like, new meat, yay!
In the meantime, I think you can also... I think you can also start to see, though, a developing thing between Burke and Vicki, because Burke is becoming attracted to Vicki because he realizes that, unlike, and I mean, Vicki and Carolyn are similar ages, but Vicki brings the Alexandra Mulkey in the beginning. Vicki brings more of a maturity to the role.
No, I don't know about that because she whines for the last 40 episodes. She's just like, doesn't she? And then she's always there when someone has a phone conversation.
Funny.
She's always there.
The thing about Vicki, though, I find like so far, like up to this point, is like she'll be like, "Oh my God, that's sad that's happened. Let's talk about me. Oh, that's sad that's happened. Let's talk about me."
But she's always there. Don't you notice? She's always got her jacket, and she's always there when Roger's having a phone conversation. Roger opens the door late at night, and she's there in her bathroom. She's like, go away.
She's like the worst nanny. She's one of those nannies like gets involved in the whole family drama. It's like
she's just there and she's got her bathrobe on. He's like, what the fuck are you doing up? It's like, I wanted to find something to read, or she wanted a snack or some shit like that. Yeah. And she's going to the drawing room.
There's no doubt she isn't. No, there's no doubt that she's, remember that she's trying to find out what's the scoop. I mean, is she related to the Carolyns family? What's going on with this note? And she does become a Yenta. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. But in the beginning,
she's a little narc too.
Yeah, that's true. But in the beginning,
that's why David wants to kill her. He just sits there and dreams of ways to kill his nanny.
That's because Victoria's passive aggressive.
So it wouldn't matter who David had as a nanny. He'd be thinking of ways to kill anybody. I mean, he tried killing his father.
But I mean, seriously, why does he hate her so much? Other than the obvious, I mean, that kid hates people. He just.
You know what I think it is? I think it's David's like a horse or like a wild animal, and you're fine if you're strong next to him, he's fine. But as soon as he sees a bit of weakness, he's on it. So he's like,
yeah, he is. That's true. I can't wait to get into the other episodes and the other shit this kid pulls.
But I mean, I do think the reason why Burke is interested in Victoria is also because Victoria is not really interested in Burke, and I think Burke likes the chase.
That's true.
Right.
That's true. That's right.
Like pretty much throwing herself on a platter in front of him.
But it doesn't seem like he's really pursuing her that much, though.
Well, yeah, but you can tell by all the innuendo stuff like this is like, can I have a conversation? Why don't you come up to my room and we can have.
I know. Speaking of, I mean, back in the '60s, I think propriety was starting to go out the door a little bit. But don't you think that was a little cagey?
Well, just put it this way: if Burke Devlin was Mike Tyson, he would have had Vicki.
Yeah, true. But he did order her steak. He was going to feed her first. That is so important.
Yeah, but look at the circumstances. Okay, he meets her down in the cafe, right? He could have ordered a steak in the cafe, couldn't he have? But it's like, come up to my room, says the spider, the fly, etc., etc.
But all of his paperwork is in his room, in his suite.
Oh yeah, because
his suite in the Collinsport. What's that place called? The Collinsport Inn, or
Yeah. But here's the thing. But here's the thing.
Like her parentage is going to be in Burke's paperwork. Yeah, right.
It was, hey, guys got to try, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. But here's the thing about Vicki, and this is something now, the way the character later turned in, which is, I don't understand, I don't know what's wrong, what's going on, and later on she was a simp. But in defense of the character, the way it was originally supposed to come off is that she was supposed to be a stronger character and a smarter character, and in fact, she talked back to Roger, and she talked back to the characters.
Oh, she doesn't take much shit. She stands her ground.
That's right, and that was part of the way she was originally supposed to be envisioned. But later on, it got kind of lost in the shuffle. And we're not going to talk. And again, that's for later on. But it should be noted that her character in the beginning was different, and she and she knew what was going on. But of course, where she went over the line is that, listen, she was only an employee, she was only a governess, but she immediately, because of this. Because of this feeling that she had that she was somehow related to this family, decided to put her nose in where it really didn't belong. But we, as the viewer, were very interested in where it didn't belong. So that's why it kind of took effect. But you'll also notice.
Did she have a teaching certificate? She's like basically homeschooling David? Does she? Can she?
Yes, she is. Yes, she is. And that's a good point. I don't think she ever had.
But she was educated somewhat in the foundling home. Somebody coined the term foundling home. Is it just an orphanage?
Orphanage, yeah.
No, it's a foundling home. It was a foundling home, and she apparently did have some teaching experience.
I'm gonna have to look that up. That's gonna drive me nuts now.
Where they bring up orphans, an orphanage.
So it is an orphanage. Okay,
yeah, it's an orphanage.
Is it?
An orphanage. Yeah, it's an orphanage.
Nice word for orphanage.
That's right. I think maybe foundling home.
But somebody did she already bring up the fact in this one that somebody was sending money and left a note?
Yeah.
That's been going on since the beginning. They're
right.
sending you $50 a month.
That's not $50 a month. And
a foundling is an infant that has been abandoned by its parents and is discovered and cared for by others. So there we go. We have learned a new term today, campers.
But we're talking about a foundling home. So a foundling home.
But I mean, so it's basically an orphanage for abandoned children.
That's correct.
How long do you stay in a foundling home? Don't they kick you out when you're like 18?
Well, she left. Maybe that's why she got that letter.
She's supposed to be 20, so she stayed 2 years past her prime. Is that because she's simple?
They probably loved her. They probably loved her so much. And I don't remember, but she may have had a little teaching experience at the foundling home. So that may have been another thing. Anyway, but she didn't have a license.
But no, she wants. Yeah, but she's obviously. I mean, it doesn't take too much to actually. A common intelligent person to teach a young child, basic stuff at homeschooling. It's very basic.
Well, I could, but at the same time, you kind of think of you got David's behavioral problems.
Well, he can't go to school. That kid couldn't even be mainstreamed in modern society.
Well, I'm just
homicidal.
But he's not. But first of all, he's homeschooled. Could you just imagine when he becomes a teenager or a young adult, he has to mix into society other than his family?
That's what I'm saying. He's homicidal. He's crazy. I mean, this kid hates. I mean, he hates his father with the passion of 20 blazing suns.
Do you know what's fun? You know what's interesting though, and you get this about episode 48. Is David Roger's child?
Exactly.
It would explain Rogers.
There's a love triangle that they do mention slightly about the car accident, and it was David's mother. And Burke and Roger in a car together, and then something happens, and then they do a hit.
But Burke does really actually take a liking to the boy. Too.
Well, it would make, but the thing is, if I don't, I don't sure if this ever pans out. I mean, we're only going up to episode 48, and we'll see how this pans out. But it would be interesting that if it is not his, because Tom did mention in the last episode, behind the scene notes about when the writers were writing to span these characters out over the episode. See that, Roger marries Laura and she's so many months pregnant, isn't she? So
7 months.
And the thing is maybe that's why Roger doesn't like David, because maybe he knows it's not his. They don't. They haven't said anything about this, but it's something to gnaw over.
Well, actually, there is a bit of dialogue in one of the episodes where actually Roger expresses the fact to Elizabeth that he has doubt. He believes that David might have been the son of Burke, and I'll find that somewhere before the end of this. But basically, he says that's why I hate David, because I never knew whether I was his father.
Well, that's still getting ahead a little bit for us.
No, but it's still in one of the episodes here.
We don't want to ruin it for all the people.
No, that's still in this block of episodes. That's still in this block.
Yeah, it does. It all comes out when it gets mentioned at the same time that David gets found out, when it all comes to light exactly what David did.
Right.
And then we get Elizabeth playing a bit stupid about, oh my God, David couldn't do this, even though everything.
She's got some blind, serious love for people or whatever. She really wants him to be, though, the child, because there are no other heirs really other than Roger male. So she wants a boy anyway to carry on the Collins name.
And the way Carolyn's going, I mean, we're not
Who knows what the hell's going to happen to Carolyn?
The bloodline there.
So here it is, everybody. FYI. So it's in episode 32, which is well within the block we're talking about. And Elizabeth and Roger are having the conversation. And Elizabeth is saying, but he's still your son. And Roger says, is he? Are you sure? I'm not. And she says, Roger. And then he says, I married Laura right after Burke's trial, didn't I? She's his girl. She was his girl, wasn't she? And David.
Sure, he did say that.
He did say that. He said David is Laura. David is Laura's son almost 8 months after our marriage.
And that's where the music comes. Dun, dun, dun.
Almost. and where Liz says, that's ridiculous, Roger. And you know it. And Roger says, maybe not. And maybe. But I know that all those years I spent looking at that boy, I kept seeing Burke. And I hated him, Liz. I won't deny it. I hated him. Da, da, da.
There you go. Da, da, da.
And explain, da, da, da. And like Prince Harry, explain the red hand.
Really, don't even get me started on that bullshit right now. That's another podcast completely.
But, so, I mean, that's what I have to admire about Dark Shadows is like, the thing is now that we're covering it, there's a lot of these episodes because, I was quite far ahead. And now that I'm watching it, I'm actually paying a lot more attention. And
same here.
And that's what's quite good about doing this podcast as well, that you get things that you're so familiar with, but then you start watching it and you know that you have to cover it, but then you start picking up a lot more than I think than the average.
So much to pick up that there's just so many little Easter eggs and so much stuff that builds upon itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's why it's like the whole thing about David is like, oh my God. And then it comes out like a couple episodes later about the car accident.
Right.
And that Burke and Laura and Roger because they mention Laura's name.
They blame everything on her. Everything is
Roger's wife has a name now named Laura. So and they're in the car together, and the car they do a hit and run. So it's basically, I Know What You Did Last Summer starts playing.
Yeah, they were all drunk in the car. But then, Roger's car goes askew like that, and so they're going to blame Burke for that too. Everything that happens with a car, Burke Devlin is behind it.
Well, I think the whole thing has to be that. We don't know much about Laura, but we know that Laura because not much is said about her. We know that she's in a mental institution. So we're under the assumption that something happened during this crash that basically Laura's having some kind of not behavioral but emotional difficulty. So she's in a hospital. We know that. We also know that whatever happened in the car that night, Burke went to jail for. So I guess they must have put Laura and Roger got together to frame Burke, saying, I guess
and
Burke
he testified against Burke in court. Roger did. So.
Somehow Sam, I don't know if Sam was on the side of the road or not because we're not clear about.
They're not clear about Sam.
We'll know that later because all this is talking about.
But we do know that they put Burke behind the wheel of the car.
Right.
That's what we know. So, and I guess Laura, when choosing between Burke, who was poor at that time, and Roger, I guess she decided to go where the money was.
Right.
Because you got to remember, you can go either the poor town boy,
right,
who basically might be great in bed, might be a great looker, might have the most gorgeous body, or you can go with the rich guy who might be able to take care of you for the rest of your life.
And have affairs.
Yeah, and so it looks like Laura went that way because, she did have a relationship with Burke before she got with Roger.
Right.
And now, then she picked Roger when the car accident happened. So there we are.
And the major thing also is, and Vicki raised the question of why David hated Vicki. And it's very odd because David really wanted his mother. And even as early as episode 2, or one of these episodes where David is looking in the window. No, excuse me. It was the episode right after the car crash. And David's looking into the window of his room and he's saying, Mother.
Right.
Not Psycho Mother, but Mother. Right. That did remind me a little bit. And you're going to see later on. A lot of what you've been talking about happens later. So just again. That's
the whole point. That's everything builds.
It's a spoiler. But
everything builds. Everything builds.
But they did raise a lot of the questions in these first 48, which is interesting. So it'll be interesting to handle this.
It's true. And did you really see now that it's turning into a whodunit?
Basically.
Yeah, and that's what it is. There are a number of whodunit plots going on. There's a little ghostly laugh, by the way, in one of the episodes in the 40s or something, and that incidentally, the actress who laughed was Clarice Blackburn, who will come later on into the show. as a character. But at that point, she was only a gleam in Dan Curtis's eye. So she became an extra. There were actually two women who provided laughs up to this point, ghostly laughs, and the other one was Florence Stanley, who was an actress at the time, and she went on. If you've ever seen Up the Down Staircase,
yes,
she is in Up the Down Staircase as one of the teachers with Sandy Dennis. So that is her major claim to fame. After that, I'm not sure whether she did a lot.
I think she did. Did she do a sitcom or something like that?
Oh, she might have. Yes, excuse me. I'm blanking out on the name.
Yeah, in the 70s.
Yeah,
I know the name. I can even see her face. Stanley. Yep.
But that was Florence Stanley, and Florence Stanley would be called upon to do Weeping Josette in future episodes.
Okay, yeah.
Which you never see. But anyway,
My Two Dads in Night Court.
Right.
There you go.
Okay, there you go.
There you go. So Florence Stanley went on to do some stuff.
I remember her very well.
Yep.
Oh, and I think she was she in Fish as well with Abe Vigoda?
Fish. Yes, that's her, I believe.
Yes.
That's her. That's right. You hit the nail on the head, Keith. So there's another one that did, but all she did in Dark Shadows was weep and wail. You never saw her on screen.
But she did it so well.
It's sad that they couldn't bring her. They couldn't find a place for her. She was lovely.
She would have been a great. She would have been a great housekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But I have to say that I think I sit there and say there's so much emotional depth here in these next episodes, these 26 to 48. You got Elizabeth showing such emotional depth finally. And I thought that there's some really good moments there where she talks to Carolyn and talks about Carolyn's future. And it's like, she's just really made it come to life. And I like that. And I like the way that we don't get too much Maggie, unfortunately, between the 26 and 48, Catherine Scott's character. But you do get a little bit of foreshadowing about what her relationship with her father and how she's really caring. I mean, but her father's quite mean to her.
Right.
He's like, she's like trying to take care of him. She's taking care of him. I mean, it's like he's like the child and she's like the adult.
Well, he's also the drunk. He's the alcoholic, and he's taking it out on her.
But she also covers for him a lot. So it's like she's always covering for him. And, and I think this is what's interesting, that I love the changes that we are seeing in the characters now. I love that Burke is no longer the villain with the curling mustache,
Right.
He's turning into a full-fledged 3D character. I think Roger's character fits where it is. We got Sam and Maggie's characters growing. We got, and then Elizabeth Stoddard is finally coming out of her shell and becoming more the matriarch, the caring matriarch, not the woman with a dark secret.
Right.
So that is going on, but there's now emotional center going on here.
And also the one that will do anything to protect the Carolyns family, because in the episode where Jonas Carter finally goes over, because he figured out that David was the one. He's the only sheriff that ever solved the case out of all the sheriffs they ever had. And he goes to Collinwood to confront them, and Liz definitely denies it. And because as far as Liz is concerned, family comes first. And Liz in this episode, this is Liz's episode actually, because she's saying this is what a Collins family members should do: protect family. And the sheriff looks at her and says, I think my wife's got something cooking on the stove. I think, and he gives her a wink, wink, nod, nod. And that's the end of that. And so David doesn't have to go to be tried as an adult, which would have been a very interesting thing back in those days.
I think people are going to really start getting into it in these episodes, 26 to 48. It's a foundation for a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, and I like there's a lot of foreshadowing going on, which I think is really well done. And I said before, the acting has gotten better. And and then out of the first 25 episodes, I kind of went to like up until like the third week when we mentioned the last one.
And two things. Let's not forget that silver filigree pen that comes into existence
right
in episode 42, where Burke gives it to Carolyn as a present. a very rare thing that he picked up in South.
Well, it was very expensive, and he doesn't want to have her. She shouldn't have it, basically, because I mean, let's face it, they know what Burke's up to. And Carolyn, I mean, I don't know. When I was 18, was I that stupid? When somebody's using you.
You were. You went to a Catholic school.
That just jaded me. It made me more jaded. I
have to sit there and say that, I just think that if Carolyn's going to get all excited about a man, I would just think that she would want something more than a pen. I know that might be an expensive pen, but...
I know. It's just like, don't give me no fucking pen. Give me concert tickets or something I can really do something.
Well, I mean, like, for instance, like a patient bought me a Mont Blanc pen, and I think it's about 75 pounds they spent on it.
Well, something like that's more appropriate, though.
But I was more excited about something that was a bit more personable. I don't know. I mean, I thought the design on the pen was quite interesting. I would like to, it had like little figures on it and stuff like that.
It was very Merlin-ish, like, sort of like Wizards.
But the question is, maybe Burke gave it to her, probably ran out of ink. Probably doesn't write.
Well, he wanted to give her something probably to, like, seal the deal with their friendship. But then, she accidentally left her ring, so he'd have to call her back. So.
Well, I also have to sit there and say that, like, if I put myself in that position, let's sit there that I get like a pen from somebody at work and I go, Mom, look, I got this expensive pen. And my mom goes, you're not allowed to keep it. I'd be like, what? But yet if I came home with like jewelry or a watch, then I probably would understand more. I'd be like, Mom, it's
but a pen, yeah.
But of course, the pen that was used as the plot device, and they really didn't care. They had to have something like all, whether it was the brake valve or the pen. And then, of course, Roger gets upset and doesn't want to give the pen back, and then in the later episodes we're going to see exactly what happens with that pen, because that pen turns into a very pivotal.
Yeah, hang in there, people. There's all kinds of stuff coming up.
I have to sit there and say that we go to the disappearing of Bill Malloy. And I have to sit there and say that this segment of episode 26 of 48, you can tell that they're handling this, and they're going to handle the next bit of mystery coming up.
Right.
Better than they dealt with that car crash. That car crash, it was a car wreck, that car crash. Just like, what? It's like, because I mean, not to give anything away, but the thing is, they aired it out, so we got, there, what's happened to Bill Malloy, and when we do, and we got like great suspects going on here, because we got Sam Evans, because there's something, he's upset with Bill Malloy. We got Roger there, and we got Burke. So we got three very interesting characters who have their own interest about what's going to happen to Bill Malloy and if anything has happened to him. And I think that we have now a great big lead up. So now, whatever the mystery is going to be with Bill Malloy, we now got we're more vested interest. It's not like it's like with the car accident, the way they handled that. We all knew it was David. We knew it was David from the very beginning. So,
right.
One thing that I wanted to bring out in terms of Bill Malloy, and this is something was a plot line that never really came to the fore, but that was Bill's interest in Elizabeth, and the fact that Bill really cared for Elizabeth.
I texted Keith when I was rewatching the episodes and asked him, I go, do you think Bill Malloy's in love with Elizabeth?
Bill, I think it's, what I think it, I'm not sure what's going on there, but
he's very loyal to the.
What we're going to do is we're going to cut to a commercial break and cut to our second part of our interview with Kathleen Scott, and we'll be back after a word from our sponsor.
Hello?
What's your favorite scary movie?
I have a bunch of favorite movies. I watch them all on Shudder.com for only $4.99 a month.
That's a scary low price.
But if I had to pick a favorite, it'd probably be Scream.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the only streaming service that lets me watch hundreds of horror movies on demand.
I'll be right back.
Hello? Hello? Hello, are you gonna subscribe? Hello?
Go to Shudder.com to subscribe, if you dare.
Morning face. You get it when you don't sleep well. This is what happened to Linda.
Morning, guys.
Good morning. Ah, what is that thing?
It's me, Linda.
Oh my God, it talks! Run!
No, it's me, Linda from HR.
It looks hungry! Save the children! Save them! Stay back! I've got mace!
Ow! That went in my eyes!
Quit moving!
It's called beauty sleep for a reason. And there's never been a better time to get some.
Get 20% off IKEA Sultan mattresses. IKEA, love your home.
In 1985, you started Pomegranate Press to start publishing books. How was your foray into the publishing world?
Well, somebody asked me to. I'd always been writing. I'd written magazine articles, and I'd started a couple of books, novels, and then I was asked to write something when Joel Crothers passed away, and then shortly afterward, Grayson Hall, and I was writing pencil on legal pad, and I just filled the legal pad and then another one, and I submitted the little magazine article. But then I just kept writing, and it turned into book length because I just remembered so much. And I kept running into Laura and David Selby, and finally I said to my husband, who was a Time Life photographer, I said, "You took a lot of photographs, didn't you, when you used to come over to the studio?" I said, "Do you know where they are?" They'd never been. They were still just negatives and contact sheets. And he dug them out, and I said, "You know what? I've got a book." So I used Ben's photographs, and I wrote my Scrapbook Memories of Dark Shadows, and I had such a good time writing it. And then I thought, I know how to reach my audience. I know the Dark Shadows fans. So why am I going to a New York publisher? And so I started Pomegranate Press, published that book, and it sold so incredibly well. I did multiple printings, and I just plowed the money back into publishing other books. I will say that I don't know, I've published maybe 70 books altogether through Pomegranate on a variety of subjects, and certainly not all my own writing, a lot of other authors. But I just loved making books, and not one of my books ever lost money. So, they all broke even at least, and I just, and I love doing it. So Pomegranate is still around. I'm not publishing anymore, but all of my backlist are on ebook. There are audiobooks for many of them. But in these years, in the last 8 years since my second husband passed away, I've been writing fiction.
Now, I noticed that for our listeners out there, if you want to read more of Catherine's fiction, it is available part of the Amazon Prime Kindle special. So if you got that, you can actually download her books and read them. Now,
I did Dark Passages. That's the one that was my first novel, and I love that book. It's very meaningful to me because Ben and I divorced, but we were really close friends. And my second husband was the founding editor of Los Angeles Magazine. I seem to have a thing for journalists. And anyway, we were together for 20 some years, and he became very ill. And so I became his caregiver, and I would sit with him, and with my laptop open, and I started writing Dark Passages, and it was published 6 months after he passed away. So that was my first fiction, and then I started writing the Meg Barnes Jinx series, Down and Out in Beverly Hills, and things.
Brilliant. I love those.
Dance at the Savoy.
Yeah,
you wrote some books on caregiving as well.
I did, because the doctor that treated Jeff suggested that I keep a journal because the disease that my husband had there was no cure or treatment. It was called progressive supranuclear PSP, and I started keeping a record because he said, I'll be giving medications and there'll be, changes. It's best you keep track. Well, I realized after Jeff passed away that I had this template for a book on my laptop. It was a daily diary. And not only about his care, but also about my emotions and the challenges that I felt as a caregiver. So I wrote the book. I became very involved in Cure PSP, which is a wonderful organization. There's a PSP organization that's very strong in the UK. I visited their offices. They do wonderful work. And there's Cure PSP in the United States. I've been a spokesperson for them on occasion, and I've written now 4 books on caregiving. I never expected to do that, but a publisher approached me, and my agent rather, and asked if I would do it. And I've written 4 books on caregiving.
I bet it strikes a chord because that's something that a lot of people have to deal with. Eventually.
Everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who has not at some point or another in their lives had to be a caregiver. And especially at this time of my life, most of my friends have been through it or are doing it. You're caring for an elderly parent. You're caring for a sister, brother, a spouse. And it's a privilege, as any caregiver I think will tell you, and it is a challenge.
Right.
Writing on a very personal level about that, I now get a couple of letters a week from people who've read my book, which is very specific to me and to my caregiving experience, and yet it strikes a chord because I think all caregivers essentially deal with the same things. At a certain point, you realize that there is nothing you haven't seen, done, and taken care of.
I would imagine people look to that because it's some journey that some of us are definitely going to have to, deal with.
Absolutely.
Someday, or like you said, they have, and it's great that you wrote that because I'm sure that it was very.
It was cathartic.
Yeah.
And then when you realize, I am a writer. It was my way of dealing with grief and loss. And now my first husband, I was so close to him. Ben has passed away as well. And I really do feel the loss of both of those people in my life. I was very, very close to both of them.
Yeah, I was a caregiver for my grandmother who had Alzheimer's. And though I have to sit there and say that I have listed, for me personally, going through extreme highs and extreme lows through the whole process, I do have to sit there and say that in a weird way, I feel like I'm closer to her now, after she passed. For some reason, I have like these really weird, special memories and moments that no one else was ever going to have that I was able to share. Yeah. From the point where, all she wanted to eat was jelly beans and hot fudge sundaes.
Oh.
She would just laugh. You know what I mean? She didn't know who I was, but she would just laugh. And
I know. But all Jeff wanted were pancakes and malted milks.
Yeah. It's like, and every time I think of jelly beans and hot fudge sundaes, I just smile now. So, but yeah. Now, for your works of fiction, how did you find working on like memory books, such for like Dark Shadows, and memorabilia books, such as your lobby cards books, and then changing formats to write fiction? Which do you prefer? Do you prefer the fiction, or do you prefer the Dark Shadows memory books and memorabilia books? And
I've written several memoirs. I think the secret to writing a memoir is to write it as though you're writing fiction, although you're telling the truth, but you're still telling a story, and also to keep it to subject. I wasn't writing so much about myself with my memoir as I was writing with the bunny years. I was writing about my experiences as a Playboy bunny. Mm-hmm. When I wrote about caregiving, I was writing about caregiving. Mm-hmm. And when I was writing about Dark Shadows, I was just writing about Dark Shadows. Mm-hmm. So I didn't. I stuck to one subject, and I think that's the way I was most comfortable doing memoir. Fiction, it took me a while to get the hang of it. I found writing first person was the most comfortable for me, and then I did a standalone book, September Girl, which is not published yet, but that's written third person, and now I've started another book series. Just started it, and that'll be third person. But I'm really learning. I'm getting better. I look back at something I wrote, years ago, and I just think, oh gosh, let me jump in there and redo that.
I read your.
You never stop learning when you're writing.
Yeah, I read Jinx. I read Down and Out in Beverly Hills, and I read your Dark Passages books. And personally, I love your style of writing. It kind of reminds me of a little bit, if I had to compare you to anyone, it'd be Olivia Goldsmith and Fanny Flagg, but your own creation. But and the reason why I compare you to those two, because when I used to read Olivia Goldsmith before she passed, and Fanny Flagg books, I finished your books, and after I finished them and I put them down, I feel really depressed because I feel like I've just lost some friends. It's like, that's what I like about your writing style. It's like I become so close to them, and they make me smile, and when they get themselves in all sorts of trouble, I just like. And then when I close, it's like, oh my God, I just lost a friend. My friends now left me, and that's how I thought when I read your book. So,
I tend to write about serious things in a funny way. I tend to write funny. I do know that. I think I don't like being unhappy for very long. So, but the reality is that Down and Out of Beverly Hills is about a woman who has everything and loses everything. Mm-hmm. I for many years worked in the homeless program at my church, and so I saw a lot of homeless people and what their struggle was, and realized that there were some of them, women especially, living in their cars. So that was the basis for writing it. So in fact, it's a very funny mystery series. But what I'm writing about is the gritty underbelly of homelessness, and in Dark Passages, I'm writing with a wink and a nod to Dark Shadows, of course. But I'm really writing about a mother-daughter relationship, and I think. Once you read that whole book and then think about it, you think, oh my God, that's what she was doing. Because it's not apparent in the story. I tend to write funny, and maybe I need to stick with that.
But you write funny, but the thing is, there's this thread of truth that runs through your books, and that's what I think. And I think to be able to capture that is truly remarkable. And that's why I was, before we recorded, I was asking you, like, are you coming up with another Meg Barnes book? And
what? I understand why you're referring to Flagg and Goldsmith, because they too did that same thing. They wrote about, serious things.
Yeah.
But very funny. A lot of humor.
Yeah, and there's always humor in the absurd sometimes, in the absurd situations.
Oh yeah, I mean, who doesn't sometimes feel like just laughing at a funeral? And
That's terrible.
It is though. It's like,
well, no, I mean, I've been through it. I mean, I've had a personal, real tragic loss a couple of years ago when we were in the hospital, and I mean, we just got so punchy after being so tired. And we just find these things, anything that was probably so out of whack, we should not have by any means been laughing at, but we did.
It's a release.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a release.
It's just human nature. I mean, it's also survival mode in your brain, too.
Yeah.
Now, it looks like you've been extremely busy in the last couple of years with quite a few little film features coming our way. You did
Yeah, I have. After my husband passed away and I got back to work, I had this wonderful agent, and I ended up doing quite a few things. I did the new Woody Allen film, Rainy Day in New York, which is going to be released in October in Europe. And I did Three Christ, Richard Gere and Julianne Margulies are in that. I don't know when that's coming out. And I did a really wonderful film that I'm really curious to see how and when it'll be distributed. It's called The 11th Green. I play Mamie Eisenhower. And that was really wonderful. I so enjoyed that. Campbell Scott is in that one. And then I did First Wives Club. There's a new TV series. I haven't seen it, but I'm in the very first episode. I never
First Wives Club. Is that a spinoff of the movie? Because the movie was fantastic. I just laughed.
Yeah, I'm in that, but I haven't seen it. And and then I did a Lifetime film, and then I did a Hallmark Christmas broadcasting Christmas. So it's played the last 2 years.
That'll play forever every Christmas now.
Yeah, that was really fun. And I actually, a fair amount of really fun work. It's nice to be acting again because, it's my career started, 54 years ago.
You haven't slowed down at all, though. Well, you're just a motoring.
No. I'm really enjoying it, and some of the other things that I've kind of taken on. I'm very proud of my first husband's work as a photojournalist with Time Life. So I've got a website, Ben Martin, photojournalist, and I'm working on with his archive. Wonderful photographs going back to the mid-50s because he was
older. Exciting career that must have been.
Really fun. Yeah, it was, and I'm proud of my second husband who started Los Angeles Magazine, which is still thriving, and was the template for city magazines all over the country. So I kind of have one big foot in that world of journalism, and I continue to contribute articles and that sort of thing. I really enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And I'm doing these audio books. And I must say I am thrilled. There's a company called Oasis, and they are doing all of the Marilyn Ross Dark Shadows books on on audio. And so far I've done Dark Shadows and Victoria Winters and the first Dark Shadows, and I'm currently doing The Secret of Barnabas Collins, and I'll be recording all of these. Years ago, I was asked if I wanted to reissue these paperbacks, and the timing wasn't right for Pomegranate. So it just feels very good now to be doing the narration. I've done quite a few audiobooks, so and this is personal. I'm just loving it.
How do you enjoy narrating for audiobooks? What's the process like? I've always wondered.
Well, you're all by yourself in a studio with an engineer and you just read. I find myself sitting there with the earphones on in my own little world, becoming so involved in the story. And the stories have nothing to do with what actually happened on Dark Shadows, but because they're novelizations. But I get so involved, and I'm sitting there literally reading for 5 hours. And
you do it all in one sitting?
Oh, no. It takes a...
I was going to say, oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, no, because no. Certainly not in one day.
I was going to say that.
No.
I've never understood how they did audiobooks either.
No, the longest that I've worked, because it's your voice, and you start getting a little foggy after a while. About 5 hours is the most I can go. 4 is probably optimum.
What about audio dramas? Do you find yourself, how are they put together, the Dark Shadows audio dramas that you've done that have been released? Are they done, do you do them as a group, or do you do them by yourself and then they kind of...
We do them every which way. In the beginning, they would have 6 of us in the studio. And of course that turned into that was like a party. And, we'd get together with Johnny Carlin and David Selvey, Laura Parker. We just have a high old time. But Nancy Barrett lives in the Southwest. Marie lives on the East Coast. We all live different places. So now we sometimes just go in and read our own lines. Which isn't nearly as much fun. One of the best experiences, I went into the studio with Mitch Ryan. I adore him. And we did a couple of them together. Laura and I always have a good time. I mean, Laura and I are very close, and we always have a fun time.
So before we wrap this up, what is your favorite memory of Dark Shadows that you can share with our listeners?
Oh, my favorite memory. I don't even know. I have a couple of them. I think that my favorite scene that I ever did is the one in the diner where I meet Jonathan Frid the first time as Barnabas Collins, the stranger who, I see through the window as I'm about to lock up the diner, and I'm ready to close and leave, and I'm tired, but I unlock the door, invite him in, make a fresh pot of coffee in the Silex, and chat with this man. It's my favorite scene. And next to that, there are several scenes as Josette that are wonderfully romantic. There are a couple of scenes I did with Laura and with Jonathan. One of my favorite actors to work with was also Johnny Carlin. We just had a kind of intimacy in that studio.
You and Jonathan Frid, when you were together, sometimes it just reminded me of Wuthering Heights. I don't know why. It was such a Bronte moment.
I know. And I never stopped to think. There I was, 20 years old. And I was enthralled with this man who was more than 20 years older than me. And I never stopped to think that there was an age difference. Joan Bennett became one of my best girlfriends right up until the day she died. I loved that woman, and I used to stay with her in Scarsdale, and a couple of times toward the end of her life. She was like a girlfriend. I can't explain it, but old and young, we were all working together. And
like a family, basically.
It never occurred to me that I was having a romance with this middle. I mean, what was I thinking? And if somebody had told me he was 200 years old, I would have been shocked.
Definitely a generation gap going on there.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's an interesting question because I love that. And there are other roles that I love playing. I love doing Providence. I love Bogart. I got to know him. And I love doing playing Sally Decker in Police Squad. I love comedy, and that was physical comedy. I've been playing George Siegel's girlfriend on The Goldbergs. I hope they invite me back.
Oh my goodness, I have to watch those episodes.
Working with George Siegel is just wonderful, and again, physical comedy. And it's just
fantastic.
Well, George Siegel is comedy gold.
Oh, he is. Yeah, he's magic. Yeah.
So, if people wanted to find you on social media or by your website, where should they go to?
Well, I'm on Facebook, and I'm sure there's a way of finding me. I mean, I'm Catherine Lee Scott. What can I say? And my website is www.catherineleescott.com. And so that's the easiest way to find me. And I try to keep up with everything. Don't try to message me on Facebook because I don't think I've ever looked at it. I just go to the part where, there are things down the middle. And I read.
Go to your feed and your page.
I go to that and I forget to add new. So I've got this big number of people that I've got to click and make friends. But I forget. But anyway, I am on Facebook and I do try to keep up with it.
Well, we're going to be watching you and waiting and listening to see all the new wonderful things that are coming out from you because, like I said, you just have not slowed down. You're just a dynamo.
Thank you.
I hope I'm as active as you.
No, it's or not. I mean, don't buy a house that needs complete renovation. No, these are just fun things. I'm very lucky to still be working and to be enjoying my life and these wonderful old friendships.
So I want to thank you for joining us and for this interview. It's been lovely speaking to you.
It's been a pleasure.
And hope to hear more from you soon. And for our listeners out there, if you joined up to our website's newsletter at www.llpodcast.com, you will be able to find where you can get in touch with Catherine Lee Scott's website and make sure that you look at her book collection, which are available from Amazon.com and through her other means through her website. So thank you again and hope to speak to you soon, Catherine.
Thank you.
Say good night, Vicki.
Good night, everybody.
Good night for myself.
Thank you.
Amazon. Oops, wrong Amazon. Although we both contain an array of diversity, the rainforest with all of its animals and us with all of our products, come check us over today and find all the products you need quickly and efficiently. And buy it with one click. And now you can even use us to donate to your favorite charities using Amazon Smile. Amazon Smile is worth your while. Come check us out today.
We are one planet. We share one extraordinary home. We are millions of wonders, but we are all one world. If we only get one chance to save our planet, to protect it for the next generation, then we have to take it. This is our chance. This is our fight. For our planet, for our home, for all of us. Join WWF today.
Hello, welcome back to Dark Shadows, episodes 26 to 48. And we'd like to thank Kathleen Scott for that fantastic interview. And this finishes our Kathleen Scott interview. And next month, we'll have another interview from a Dark Shadows fan who's worked with Dark Shadow actors. And we will give you more information in our next episode. So make sure you listen to our next Dark Shadows, which will be next month in September for season 3. So this brings us to Character Breaks. Now, Character Breaks is going to be a new part of our Dark Shadows podcast where we're going to discuss our favorite characters and our least favorite characters from these block of episodes from episodes 26 and 48. So, Tom, who is your favorite character in episode 26 to 48?
Well, it's going to be a tie. I like Roger. I like Thayer David just starts to come on as Matthew Morgan, but even there you get some sense of the evil as the second Matthew Morgan. Thayer David's, is his demeanor and and again another one with the old New England accent and the gruffness. You really can see an extra dimensional difference. So I would say that David Ford to a lesser extent. So I would say those three is a favorite. My least favorite actor was a guy by the name of Patrick McVeigh, who was on for one episode, portrayed Elizabeth's banker.
I'm with you on that.
This guy, as it turns out, the rumor is that he got on because he was Dan Curtis's golf buddy, and Dan Curtis wanted to put him on. And Patrick McVeigh, to his credit, does have a lot of TV, primetime TV background, both before and after. But I don't think he was used to the soap opera atmosphere. He's the one episode that he's on. He's looking at the teleprompter a million times. He's stilting. His performance is stilted. He comes across almost like Nixon during the Nixon debates. You can see he's perspiring. He's getting real pale.
Well, don't you think those lights were kind of hot to work under?
Well, to be honest, the thing is, I remember him, and he didn't even register on my radar. To me, he looked like a banker wanker with a nerd herd that he's looking for.
Yeah, I'm definitely up with him.
The nerd herd's missing a member, and they're out looking for him as we speak.
Well, he was on what's the word? He was not forget. Well, he's not unforgettable. He's not.
Well, he didn't even. I remember. Now that you met, it was kind of funny. But when we were discussing it, and that banking scene is very, very important to the plot.
Right.
Well, I didn't even register him at all. I forgot all about him until you just mentioned him, and I forgot all about him. So yeah, so it's like he didn't even come across my radar.
He was really a non-entity, and then there was talk that he looked like a gnome. Certain people didn't.
Well, yeah, he did. He looked like he was straight out of Lord of the Rings.
With the ears coming out, he was either a combination.
The precious.
Any minute, I would think Gollum would come onto the set and say, Gollum, Gollum, Gollum.
Or actually one of the bankers in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a good point. More like that. Yeah, the little one.
Banker wanker. He just came across as like a regular banker wanker extra who got a couple lines. So
he didn't last too long, and that's my least favorite of all of them.
What about yourself, Vicki? Who's your favorite character from these episodes, and your least favorite character?
Well, my favorite character is Mitchell Ryan. I just loved him. I thought that he just pulled it off as the cad, he encompasses all the villainy that you could possibly have as someone who's trying to bring down a family. But on the other end, the guy's got depth to him. So he's one of those characters. Now we always talk about our podcast. Do we care about the character enough to want to see them, survive onward? And he's just one of those kind of characters. I just think he's great. I love Burke Devlin. I just love him. I can't say enough about Burke.
Who's your least favorite character?
I have to be up there with, it was a tie. It was the banker, Patrick McVeigh. I can't remember what his name was on script.
I can't either.
But on a side note, and I hate to say this, Victoria Winters drives me fucking nuts right now. I can't wait for her character to evolve just a little bit more. Sorry, Alexandra. We don't interview you anytime soon.
Well, you got to realize also that her character was temporarily put in the back seat while they were figuring out the Roger Burke.
Right. Well, it's a shame because she was a great actress, and they just had her kind of like
I think Tom has the hots for Victoria Winters because
I think so too.
Keeps sticking up for her every chance he gets.
He does. There you go, Alexandra.
Combination of that and Catherine Leigh Scott was no slouch either.
I love her.
Still
She's
is,
fantastic.
by the way. She's still a very attractive lady.
I mean, the 26 to 48 for Kathleen Scott are. I mean, she's warm and she's pleasant, but there's not.
They don't give her much.
There's not much going on at this stage.
Right. No, that happens later.
I mean, my favorite character is Bill Malloy. I had to sit there and say that when he was on screen for these episodes. Now, the thing is, he does appear before these episodes, and he didn't register with me at all. But for some reason, in these 26 to 48, especially when he starts putting everything together, he really took over the screen for me, and I was just drawn to him, thinking, God, this guy is bloody fantastic. I loved him, and
he's a good actor. He really he hangs in there. He definitely he really carries the story completely.
But there's so much depth with him as well. It's like, I said before, I tell you I'll tell you how involved I was with this actor. It's like, I picked up the background between Elizabeth and Bill and what was said there, and I picked up how he was putting everything together and how he was trying to protect Elizabeth, and it's like, and he just had this huge three-dimensional character going on. My least favorite character, I have to say, is David at the moment.
Oh my God. I was going to avoid that just because we already did a psychological evaluation prior to that.
Later on, I mean, I think that I think the reason why is that I think because he's such a fantastic actor.
He is. He makes you hate him.
But he's just a little just hateful, and there's
boy you love to hate.
Yeah. Well, there's that one scene where he basically has with Burke, and then Burke's warm. He's got that nice scene with Burke, and he's trying to play the pleasant, and he even has a conscience where he's trying to get
right, exactly. That's a good point.
And I thought that that was quite nice, but at the same time, his character just goes, and then he disappears to his room, so we don't really see him until the final block of these episodes, where he suddenly pops up and he hasn't changed at all. He's just come back to being a bratty little boy again. And I'm not going to jump to the future here because we are sticking to these episodes, but I know that his character does grow. But at this for this block of episodes, every time I see him, I was like, oh, for God's sake, someone just hit him, just spank him. He needs it. He
needs a serious ass beating. Hell with the snowflake shit. Beat his ass. In
a previous episode of our Literary License podcast, we did Bad Seed, and the famous ending of Bad Seed is that they come out and do their certain calls, and then she takes Rhoda and puts her over her knee and spanks her. And I want to see Elizabeth Collins take over David, put her over her knee, and just give him a good old ass whipping. But that's it. It has nothing to do with the actor himself. It's just the character I find is quite annoying, and I think they need to find a nice center, which I know is coming up. But for these episodes, I find he's just gone back to being bratty.
Yeah, well, the thing is, whether you love or hate these actors, it's still a building block up into other stuff. I mean, you have to go through this process to get to this point, and you're going to love everybody probably by the end of it.
Honorable mention goes to Kathleen Scott for me, because I think when you do the small parts that you do see her, there is a lot of warmth coming from
her.
With her, you have her conversation with Vicki. You have her,
I agree.
And her feelings with Sam Ford, or her father,
David Ford Sam.
David Ford Sam. There you go. But you get some really nice moments with her, and
she is a very warm, loving character in these episodes.
But she doesn't come across as my favorite character in these episodes, only because she doesn't really have a lot to chew on at this particular time.
By the way, let's just remember Frank Schofield was the actor that played Bill Malloy, so that the Frank Schofield fans on Facebook don't get annoyed that we forgot his name. And
I'm going to join your fan club. I'm now a huge fan. Gotta get me a bit of Frank.
We love you, Frank. Oh, yes, we do. We don't love anyone as much as you. But and nobody knows, by the way, whether he's still alive. He completely disappeared off the
Went
face
off the map, huh?
He went off the map. He may have retired to Spain. That's what I heard. Which makes me think that he may have a Hispanic background. There's not much known about his career before or since. So
I'll do some digging around this week.
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, see what you can find out because he's an enigma. He's an enigma. I'd love to get him if he's still alive to work with us. He would be a great interview. Yeah.
God hope he's still alive. But...
And Keith would say, "Oh, I love you, Frank, I love you."
Well, seriously, if Keith says he likes somebody, he likes them, and that is such a high compliment because he doesn't like anybody.
Yeah, I always like. I sit there and say, because I said before, I watch Dark Shadows when I'm in the bathtub when I'm doing my stuff.
He does. I'm lying. He does.
I do. And I was like, oh my God, he's like fantastic. And then it's like, I'll get dressed and then I'll come back down and like I'll continue watching it, to get, to do my homework for this. And it's like, I was just drawn to him. I thought, yeah, he's fantastic.
He really is firm, and he is quite a solid character in these episodes.
So, going to our Morning Has Broken segment. Vicki, why don't you give us your final thoughts of the episodes 26 to 48?
Well, I'm glad it finally started taking off where I could actually start piecing together stuff that's going to happen and things that are waiting to happen that I already know about because I did get way ahead, as we all do. You can't just sit there and watch one. I just, one more episode. It's only 20 more minutes out of my life. I'll just keep going. But I thought this was a great episode. It's laying a great foundation.
And what about yourself, Tom? What is your final thoughts of these episodes?
Well, I do have one more thing to say before the final thought, and I do want to mention that in episode 45, for the first time, we really hear something about Josette. Carolyn is reading from the Collins family history, and she reads that Jeremiah Collins, a sixth-generation descendant of the founder of Collins Fort in 1830, married Josette Lafreniere of Paris, France. This was, of course, the original. They had no idea what the character of Josette was going to be figured out to be yet. So this was the original interpretation. And Art Wallace once again writes from Shadows on the Wall, the Writer's Bible. In 1830, Jeremiah Collins shocked his family and community by returning from Europe with his French bride. Josette Collins found she was an alien in a hostile land. Shunned by Jeremiah's family, hated by the community, her life was tormented by increasing loneliness. 2 years after the birth of her son, which never happened in the original series, Jeremiah's French bride fell or jumped from the rocks at the edge of Widow's Hill. Her body was found the next morning on the rocks below. So the bottom line is that is the first real glimpse that we get into Josette's character. So my final thoughts of this series of episodes, is that these characters and the actors are finally finding their place, as has been mentioned before. With the addition of David Ford and Thayer David, two Broadway actors. And again, David Ford was found by Leela Swift. I think Thayer David may either have been found by Leela or Bob Costello. Either way, now it takes off into almost live theater. That's what you're looking at on the show. That combined with the murder mystery that Dan Curtis is now plunging the series into, because he wanted it to develop in a different direction because of ratings, is adding extra dimensions and depth to a show which has already demonstrated its possibilities through the Gothic romance. And from here, everybody, things are only going to get better.
And myself, I have to sit there and say that now from episode 26 to 48, I now feel like I'm more invested. I found the first 25 episodes, I found myself like going, okay.
It was hard. But
as I said before, there was a turning point in those. But with I finally found myself actually really invested. I like the foreshadowing that's going on. I like how all the actors are softened. There's an emotional center. I like the little bit of humor that's going on as well, which I'm picking up on, which I find myself chuckling every once in a while. And it's not from chuckling because there's bloopers. It's chuckling from the lines that they're being said. So I quite like that. And I had to sit there and say that I am very keen to find out what's going to happen next, because what I do now is I stop at where we're stopping point. And then once we finish this episode, I will be taking my bath on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday because it's a bank holiday here, and I will be watching my episodes of Dark Shadows.
Picture that paints for me. Okay.
In my warm little fuzzy blanket called warm water and my suds. So that brings us to the end of our Dark Shadows episode from episodes 26 to 48. We want to thank all our listeners and make sure that you're with us next month when we'll be covering 49 to 52. That's 3 episodes. 49 to, I don't know. What I'll do is
70 or 71. 70 or 71, I think.
71. We're going from episode 49 to episode 71. And remember, we're plenty of things to run through our mind what may be happening. As of course, you can follow us on our various multiple platforms. Of course, you can now find us on Alexa. If you have an Alexa, just go Alexa, play the Literary License Podcast, and we will now come on. You can also find us on very many platforms. We're on Podbean, iTunes, iHeart, Cashbox. We're also on Speaker and Dweezer, and we would like to thank them on board for joining us up and sending their lovely email and putting us on their platforms. And, of course, we are also on Spotify and various other places where you find very good podcast shows, and we're included in those families.
And we also have a forum on the podcast page where you can deposit questions, answers, whatever you guys want.
Yes, our forum is up on our podcast at www.llpodcast.com. We're still trying to work out ways about this, and there is going to be a way that this will be hooked up into the major forums across various platforms as well. I'm still working on that.
And they're also on YouTube, and that's another thing. YouTube.
We're on just about every platform. If we've forgotten anything, people, let us know.
Yeah, we're on platforms. And, of course, you can follow us on our social media, which we're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr, and various other social platforms. We're also on RIPL, Ripple, and we're also on the new TikTok, which eventually we will have videos coming your way to help advertise the Literary License Podcast. And, of course, if you want to make sure that you're fully abreast of what's going on and what we're doing, because we are entering Season 3 next month, and we're entering with episode number 75 for Season 3, and we'll be having our Grand 100 episode coming soon. And, of course, you can find all that information at www.llpodcast.com, and make sure you sign up for our newsletter, which we promise you that we will not be spamming you multiple spams, but we will give you one newsletter per month. We'll give you all the information. And, of course, what you want to do is we'll also give you fantastic information on some of our guests and where you can follow them if you find them of interest. So, saying goodbye to Dark Shadows is always sad fare, but there are a couple questions that raise. What has happened to Bill Malloy? Will Burke and Carolyn get it on? Will Carolyn keep chasing after Burke? Will Victoria ever realize that Burke is actually interested in her? And will Elizabeth Stoddard sit there and ever leave the house? These questions may
stop drinking
in our next episode of Dark Shadows. So say goodnight, Tom.
Good night, everybody, and great talking to you again. Looking forward to next month.
And good night, Vicki.
Good night, y'all. Love and hugs.
And good night for myself, and we'll be seeing you next week with our special season finale. Bye-bye.
My name is Victoria Winters. A new fear has struck at Collinwood. A fear rooted in the disappearance of someone whose life has been involved with the family that lives in this great house. A fear that reaches down into
friends are wondering where I am or if I'm still alive. They're worried over nothing. They should know I'm perfectly fine. It's just a mood I get in now and then when I need to get my head clear. I turn off my phone.
Didn't you know?
Know what?
Mr. Malloy hasn't been in at all today.
3 feet high and the mailbox is full of bills. 100 messages I need to check, and when I get the chance I will. But right now I'm busy taking it easy, can't worry about stuff like that. My only concern is a left or a right turn somewhere on a map. Well, there ain't no telling where I'm bound, a big city or the country, a little beach town, but you won't find me 'cause I can't be found. I'm on a mission to be missing. I'll be back someday, I just don't know when. Till then I'll be a feather floating in the wind. So don't you go missing me, 'cause sometimes missing is my favorite place to be. I love those locations where nobody knows my name. How long I'll be staying is always subject to change.
That looked like his bed hadn't even been slept in.
Well, there ain't no telling where I'm bound, a big city or the country, a little beach town, but you won't find me 'cause I can't be found. I'm on a mission to be missing. I'll be back someday, I just don't know when. Till then I'll be a feather floating in the wind. So don't you go missing me, 'cause sometimes missing is my favorite place to be.
Everybody's wondering about Mr. Malloy, aren't they?
We're doing math.
When did he disappear?
Last night. Now come on, David.
I bet nobody really knows what happened to him.
I don't think anything happened to him. He probably had some sort of emergency and had to leave town unexpectedly. Now come on and finish that.
If they would ask me, I could tell them.
All right, David. Go and look in your crystal ball and tell me where Mr. Malloy is, and then let's get this finished.
I don't have to look. I looked already. He's dead.
David, that's a terrible thing to say.
And that's not all. It told me something else. He was killed by someone.
David, stop it.
And do you want to know who he was killed by? I'll bet you do.
All right, tell me.
My father.